Let me ask you something. Why is it that the loudest voice in your life is not your vision, not your purpose, but your fear? Why is it that the one thing that isn't even real, an idea, a possibility, a story your mind makes up, has the power to paralyze you more than reality itself? See, failure is not your enemy. Failure is not a monster hiding in the shadows. Failure is the mirror that shows you who you really are. Fear of failure. That's not fear of falling. It's fear of finding out the truth about yourself. And that's why most people never try. Because deep down, they'd rather live with the fantasy of what they could have been than face the reality of what it takes to actually become it. Listen to me, too many of you are running from failure like it's a disease, when in reality it's the medicine. You're treating failure like the enemy when it's the only thing that's ever going to shape you into somebody worth remembering. Success isn't standing on the mountain. Success is the climb. And the climb means you're going to slip, you're going to fall, you're going to get dirty. But those bruises, that sweat, that's proof you're alive and moving. The great philosopher Seneca once said, "The man who has never been beaten in battle has never truly been tested." That means if you've never failed, you've never really lived. You're hiding in comfort, you're stuck in neutral, and you wonder why your engine has no fire. See, the problem with most people is they think failure disqualifies them, but it's the opposite. Failure initiates you. Think about it. A blacksmith doesn't shape steel by whispering to it. He hammers it, he heats it, he breaks it down until it becomes stronger. That's you. Every time you fall short, every time life knocks you flat, that's the fire and the hammer shaping you into something unbreakable. You want wealth, you want success, then you better get comfortable with failing forward. Because every fortune ever built, every empire ever created started with mistakes. But here's the truth. Failure doesn't kill dreams. Fear does. Fear convinces you to never even take the first swing. Fear tells you, don't try. Because what if you lose? But I'd rather lose on the battlefield than rot in the stands. And here's the kicker. Failure doesn't last, but regret echoes forever. Cicero said, "To live without hope is to cease to live." And hope is born out of struggle, out of defeat, out of rising again, when everything inside you says quit. So hear me clearly. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the very foundation it stands on. Every successful person you admire, every story of greatness you've ever studied has a trail of failure behind it. You see the crown, but you don't see the scars. You celebrate the victory, but you ignore the battles that came before it. People love to talk about success as if it was handed down from the heavens, but history tells the truth. Failure was the tuition they all had to pay. Aristotle once said, "It is possible to fail in many ways, but to succeed is possible only in one." That means success is narrow, it's sharp, it's precise, and you only find it by cutting through mistake after mistake, failure after failure, until you land on what works. Think about the builders of wealth and empires in history. They didn't get it right the first time. They lost deals. They miscalculated. They stumbled in the dark, but they kept pushing because they understood something the average person doesn't. Failure is data. Every loss gave them a new code, a new formula, a new way to move. And if you're too scared to fail, you'll never collect the data you need to succeed. Fear robs you of the very experiences that would sharpen you. Look at Thomas Edison, who said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." He wasn't afraid to try again because he knew each attempt was a step closer to lighting up the world. The wealth wasn't just in the invention. It was in the resilience that made the invention possible. That's the part people overlook. Success is not the absence of failure. It's persistence through it. And if you're sitting around wishing for an easier path, you've already lost. Because the greats weren't given easier paths, they were given tougher hearts. Failure taught them discipline. Failure taught them patience. Failure made them wise. And wisdom is the greatest wealth you'll ever carry. So the next time you fall short, don't curse it, thank it. It's proof that you're in the arena, proof that you're chasing something bigger than comfort. Most of you aren't even afraid of failure itself. You're afraid of what people will say when you fail. You're terrified of the whispers, the laughter, the judgment, and that's why you're stuck. You're letting somebody else's opinion weigh more than your own destiny. Listen to me. Your purpose cannot fit inside somebody else's mouth. You were not created to live by applause or approval. You were created to live by vision. Plato said opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance. And yet too many of you let that opinion be the prison that locks you down. Think about it. When you were a child, you tried, you fell, you stumbled, and you got back up without shame. But somewhere along the way, society taught you to be embarrassed by mistakes. It trained you to protect your ego instead of chasing your dream. And that's why you've got people with million-dollar ideas sitting in silence because they'd rather look perfect than risk looking foolish. But here's the truth. Those same people who mock you today will be the ones asking for your help tomorrow. History remembers the bold, not the critics. Nobody writes books about the man who never tried. Nobody builds statues for the woman who played it safe. The wealth of your life, your true legacy will be measured by how much courage you had to pursue what mattered, not how clean your record looked to the crowd. The irony is, the people you're so afraid of, they're failing quietly every single day. They just hide it, they bury it, and instead of rising from it, they point fingers at you so nobody notices their own brokenness. Why let broken voices define your whole life? When you understand this, you stop living for likes and start living for purpose. And once purpose takes the driver's seat, fear loses its grip. Because judgment cannot pay your bills. It cannot build your business. It cannot raise your family. Only action does that. So stop fearing their words and start fearing your wasted potential. Because the crowd's opinion fades, but regret stays forever. Fear of failure makes you play life too small. It convinces you to shrink when you were built to expand. It whispers, don't risk it, don't step out, don't reach too far. And so you end up living in the corner of your own potential, never touching the fullness of what you were designed to do. But hear me, playing small never protected anyone. It only guaranteed they die with their gifts still locked inside. Marcus Aurelius said, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. That's exactly what fear of failure does. It stops you from ever beginning. Look at the world's inventors, explorers, and builders. They weren't the smartest in the room. They were the ones crazy enough to step into the unknown. They set sail without knowing if the shore existed. They tried the untested. They bet everything on an idea. Did they fail? Absolutely. But in failing, they discovered more than the cautious ever dreamed of. Playing safe never built cities, never wrote books, never started movements. Playing safe only builds regret. And wealth, true wealth, is never found in safety. It's built in risk. Every business deal, every investment, every breakthrough was born from someone daring to step into the uncertainty. You think success is about avoiding mistakes, but it's the exact opposite. Success is the reward for the ones who dared to make mistakes and kept moving anyway. Here's the trap. Fear will disguise itself as wisdom. It'll tell you, be careful, don't go too far, wait until the perfect time. But perfect timing doesn't exist. You'll wait your whole life and never move. Meanwhile, the one who dared to step out, even stumbling, will be miles ahead. Stop living so cautiously that you rob yourself of life. Stop waiting for guarantees before you leap. The only guarantee is that if you don't leap, you'll never fly. Failure is not the enemy, it's the mirror. It shows you who you really are, what you're made of, and where you still need to grow. The problem is, most people don't want to look in that mirror. They'd rather stay comfortable in the illusion of progress than face the truth of their weakness. But weakness unexposed can never be strengthened. Seneca once said, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. That's the gift of failure. It develops you in ways success never could. Think about the blacksmith hammering iron. Every strike, every spark, every clash of metal is violent, but it's necessary. The heat and pressure don't destroy the iron. They transform it into a weapon, into something useful, something powerful. That's you in the fire of failure. You're being shaped, refined, prepared. Without it, you'd stay soft, untested, ordinary. Failure teaches discipline when comfort would make you lazy. Failure builds patience when pride would make you rush. Failure humbles you so success doesn't destroy you when it finally comes. I've seen too many people win too soon and lose everything because they never let failure shape their character first. Wealth without wisdom is a curse, not a blessing. And failure is the classroom where wisdom is born. You can read all the books, watch all the videos, listen to all the advice, but until you step out, stumble, and correct, you'll never know what it takes. Experience is the greatest teacher, and failure is its language. So stop running from the lessons. Stop hiding from the process. Every fall is feedback. Every loss is instruction. Every disappointment is sharpening your vision. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. And when you understand that, failure stops being something you fear and starts being something you embrace, because you realize it's not the end, it's the beginning of the real you. The greatest tragedy is not that people fail, it's that they never rise again. Failure itself is not final, but quitting makes it so. Too many let one setback define their whole story, when in reality, that moment was just a chapter. Listen, the strongest trees aren't the ones that never faced the storm. They're the ones that bent, cracked, and still found a way to keep growing. As the old proverb says, fall 7 times and stand up 8. That's not poetry. That's survival. That's the code of greatness. History is full of people who were crushed by defeat but refused to stay down. They rebuilt, they rewrote, they rose again. Think of the generals who lost battles but went on to win wars. Think of the entrepreneurs who went bankrupt before building empires. Their greatness didn't come from avoiding failure. It came from refusing to accept it as the last word. Fear of failure paralyzes you, but persistence breaks the chains. When you decide that no fall is final, you take away fear's greatest weapon. Suddenly, every setback becomes a setup for your comeback. And that's where wealth, true wealth, is created. Not in the smooth moments, but in the recoveries. Here's the truth. People don't admire you for being perfect. They admire you for being resilient. They respect the one who took hits, who bled, who stumbled, but never surrendered. And when you carry that spirit, doors open that were once locked. Opportunities come to those who endure what others could not. You've got to stop asking, what if I fall, and start declaring, what if I rise again? Because that's the question that changes everything. The comeback is always greater than the setback. So don't let fear write your ending. Refuse to let failure have the last say. Stand back up, take the next step, and keep moving. Because the moment you rise again, you prove that fear never had power over you. There is one more truth that fear of failure hides from you. It robs you of time. Every day you sit in hesitation. Every night you toss in doubt. You're burning the most precious currency you'll ever own, time. You think you're protecting yourself by waiting, by analyzing, by preparing for the right moment. But in reality, you're losing ground. You're aging while you're hesitating. Opportunities don't wait for your courage. They move on to someone else who was willing to try. Heraclitus said, man cannot step into the same river twice, for it is not the same river and he is not the same man. That's how life works. Miss the moment and it never comes back in the same form again. Fear makes you think you've got forever, but forever doesn't exist. You've got breath in your lungs right now, and that's all you're guaranteed. While you're sitting in silence, someone else is moving, someone else is learning, someone else is building. And by the time you finally decide to start, they're already years ahead. Think about wealth. Not just money, but legacy, impact, influence. Every stream of wealth is built on compound effort. Small moves made daily grow into unstoppable force. But fear of failure freezes you on day one, and so you never let the compounding begin. That's why some live average lives, even though they had extraordinary potential, they simply ran out of time waiting for the safe path. It's a harsh reality. You don't lose in life because you tried and failed. You lose because you waited and never tried at all. Failure costs something. Yes, but hesitation costs everything. So stop wasting your most valuable asset. Use the time you have while you have it. Even if you stumble, even if you fall, you'll be further ahead than the person who never started. Fear may cost you pride, but hesitation will cost you destiny. And destiny is too expensive to waste on waiting. Fear of failure is loud, but let me tell you what's louder. Your potential inside you is a fire that fear has been trying to suffocate. Every "what if I fail" thought is just smoke trying to cover the flame. But deep down, you know it's there. That voice that says you were made for more. That whisper that refuses to die. Even when you've stumbled, even when life has knocked you flat, fear of failure tries to bury that fire. But the truth is, it can't kill it. It can only convince you to never use it. Here's the psychology behind it. The human brain is wired to protect you. It hates risk. It hates uncertainty. It hates discomfort. That's why fear feels so real, because your mind is tricking you into believing that stepping out is danger. But the greater danger is never stepping out at all. As Aristotle said, you will never do anything in this world without courage. It is the greatest quality of the mind next to honor. Fear tells you to shrink. Courage commands you to expand. You've got to stop giving fear the microphone. Stop letting it narrate your life. Every time you hesitate, every time you pull back, you're feeding the fear and starving your potential. The more you listen to it, the stronger it grows. But the moment you move, scared, trembling, unsure, you start starving the fear and feeding the fire. Potential is like muscle. It only grows when tested. If you hide from the weight, you stay weak. If you face the weight, even if you shake under it, you grow. That's how destiny is built, not by waiting for confidence, but by moving through fear. So the question is simple. Which voice will you follow? The voice of fear that tells you to quit before you start, or the voice of destiny that tells you to rise, to try, to keep going? Because one will bury you and the other will build you. Fear of failure convinces you that rejection is the end, but in truth, rejection is simply redirection. Every no you hear, every door slammed in your face is not a verdict on your worth. It's a compass pointing you toward where you're really supposed to go. The problem is most people take rejection as proof that they should stop, when in reality, it's proof that they're in motion. Nobody rejects a statue. Nobody turns away someone who's sitting still. Rejection only comes to those who are moving, those who are trying, those who are daring to ask for more. Think about the great builders of history. Did they all get it right the first time? No, they were ridiculed, dismissed, doubted, yet their resilience turned those rejections into stepping stones. Confucius once said, "Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." That applies to rejection just as much as failure itself. It's not the dismissal that defines you, it's your response. Every rejection is data. It tells you what path doesn't work, what door isn't meant for you, what direction you need to adjust. But fear of failure blinds you to that lesson and makes you think rejection is fatal. That's why so many quit right at the edge of their breakthrough, because they misread rejection as defeat instead of correction. Here's the shift you need. Stop asking, "Why did they say no?" and start asking, "What did that no teach me?" When you do that, you turn rejection into tuition. You pay with experience, and the return is wisdom. That wisdom applied consistently compounds into success. Rejection is not the end of the road. It's a detour to a better one. The fear of it will chain you down, but the embrace of it will set you free. So don't let a no kill your dream. Let it sharpen it, redirect it, and fuel it. Because sometimes the greatest blessing is the door that closed so you'd finally walk through the one that was truly yours. Fear of failure makes you play small when you were never created to live small. It whispers that mediocrity is safer than greatness, that staying unnoticed is better than risking exposure. But let me tell you something. The graveyard is filled with people who played it safe, who buried their gifts, who chose comfort over calling, and not one of them escaped failure. They only failed silently without ever knowing what they could have become. The truth is, playing small doesn't protect you from failure. It guarantees it, because life will always test you, whether you're reaching for greatness or hiding in the shadows. The difference is this: if you fail while reaching for more, you gain wisdom, strength, and resilience. But if you succeed at staying average, you lose your destiny without even realizing it. As Seneca said, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Playing small is the greatest waste of time, of talent, of opportunity. Think about wealth, not just financial, but the wealth of impact. Generational wealth is never built by those who shrink. Legacies are not written by those who avoid the stage. History remembers the bold, the ones who risk being seen, who risk stumbling in public because they understood that failure in the light is still better than dying in the dark with untapped potential. Fear convinces you that standing tall makes you a target, but the truth, playing small, makes you invisible, and invisibility builds nothing. Playing big, even with fear, builds muscles you didn't know you had. It stretches you into the person you were meant to be. So stop shrinking. Stop silencing your own voice. Stop dimming your own fire just to make fear comfortable. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to break out. Because the greatest failure is not falling down. The greatest failure is never rising up to the full height of who you were meant to be. Fear of failure is nothing compared to the fear of regret. See, failure stings for a season, but regret scars you for life. You can heal from falling short. You can recover from a loss. You can rebuild after the storm. But how do you heal from the what ifs that never leave your mind? How do you silence the voice that says you could have been more, but you chose less? That's the weight that will crush you if you keep bowing down to fear. You got to understand, the pain of trying and failing is temporary, but the pain of never trying is eternal. When you stand at the end of your life, you won't care about the moments you fell. You'll care about the moments you never even stepped in the ring. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And fear of failure is exactly that. It's the refusal to live fully, to step into the arena of your own greatness. Let me give you the truth. Failure, when embraced, becomes experience. Regret, when embraced, becomes a prison. Failure builds resilience. Regret builds bitterness. One pushes you forward, the other chains you backward. Which one do you think leads to wealth? Not just in money, but in legacy, in spirit, in life. Every man and woman who ever built something lasting faced failure, but they refused to face regret. So if you're scared of falling, good. That means you're human. But let your fear of regret be stronger than your fear of failure. Let the thought of wasting your life, your gift, your moment be so terrifying that it forces you to move, even when your legs are trembling. Because at the end, you won't be judged by the times you failed. You'll be remembered for the times you dared. Fear of failure will trick you into thinking you need every answer before you take the first step. It whispers, wait until you're ready. Wait until it's perfect. Wait until the stars align. But let me tell you something. You will die waiting, because readiness is a lie. Nobody ever felt ready to change their life. Nobody ever felt fully prepared to walk into destiny. The greats didn't wait for certainty. They stepped with faith. You got to understand, clarity doesn't come before movement. It comes because of movement. You don't figure it all out sitting on the sidelines. You figure it out in the game, sweating, stumbling, adjusting. The fear of failure convinces you to plan forever and act never. And that's why most people live stuck in almost started the business, almost wrote the book, almost became the person they dreamed of, but almost never built wealth, almost never changed a generation. As Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And habits are only formed when you move, when you step, when you do, imperfectly but consistently. Wealth, whether financial, spiritual, or personal, is not built in thought. It is built in action. Think of it this way. A seed doesn't wait for perfect soil or the perfect season. It breaks the ground, pushes through the dirt, stretches toward the light, and in that struggle, it finds life. You've got the seed of greatness inside of you. But if you keep waiting for perfect, you'll never plant it. So stop stalling. Stop waiting for certainty. Stop believing the lie that you need it all mapped out before you move. Step forward, fail forward, learn forward, because readiness is not found, it's forged in motion. At the end of the day, it's not the person with the perfect plan who wins, it's the one who had the courage to start before they felt ready. Fear of failure convinces you to measure your worth by other people's opinions. It makes you afraid of being laughed at, afraid of being judged, afraid of hearing somebody say, I told you so. But here's the reality. Those voices don't pay your bills. They don't carry your vision, and they don't live your life. When you let the fear of failure tie you to the opinions of others, you're handing your destiny over to people who have no stake in it. You've got to realize that every person who ever did something significant faced ridicule. Every dreamer was doubted. Every pioneer was mocked. Every builder was questioned. Yet the difference between them and the crowd is that they moved anyway. They refused to let the echo of other people's laughter drown out the call inside their own heart. Plato once said, the man who makes everything that leads to happiness depend upon himself and not upon other men has adopted the very best plan for living happily. That's the mindset you need, the strength to stand in your own conviction, even when the world doesn't see it. Think about it. Failure is not final, but living for approval is permanent slavery. If you let fear dictate your steps, you'll never step where you're supposed to go. You'll be chasing validation instead of purpose, applause instead of legacy. And when you chase applause, you're only as strong as the last clap. But when you chase purpose, you can weather silence, criticism, and even failure because your vision is bigger than their voices. So stop bowing to the court of public opinion. Stop letting the fear of being judged keep you from being who you're called to be. People will always talk, but their words only have the power you give them. At the end of the day, the only voice that matters is the one inside you, the one that says go. Fear of failure makes you magnify the problem and minimize the solution. It takes a small setback and turns it into a mountain. It takes a stumble and convinces you it's a dead end. But listen to me, failure is not a wall. It's a doorway. It's not the end of the road. It's a detour. The problem is never the real problem. The problem is how you see it. Most people look at failure like a mirror that reflects their inadequacy, but failure is really a teacher showing you where to adjust. Confucius once said, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. That's the truth. Falling doesn't define you, rising does. Yet fear makes you freeze at the fall, staring at it so long that you never rise again. Think about wealth builders, legacy builders, world changers. They all face loss. Businesses collapsed. Plans backfired. Doors slammed shut. But instead of magnifying the loss, they magnified the lesson. Instead of saying, this is proof I can't, they said, this is proof I must. That shift in mindset is what separates the broken from the builders. I'll tell you straight, failure will never be as big as you make it in your mind. It's your imagination that blows it up into a monster, when in reality it's just a bump in the road. The moment you shrink failure back to its true size, you'll see it's not strong enough to stop you. It's only strong enough to shape you. So stop giving failure a throne in your mind. Stop worshiping it like it has the final say. Failure is not a master. It's a messenger. And its only message is this: get up, adjust, try again. At the end of the day, the weight of failure is only as heavy as you decide to carry it. Fear of failure will have you hiding your gifts, burying your talents, keeping quiet when you were meant to roar. It makes you think, if I don't try, I can't fail. If I stay hidden, I can't be exposed. But let me remind you, playing it safe is the biggest failure of all. Playing it safe guarantees you die with potential still inside you. And nothing is more tragic than an unspent gift. The truth is, fear disguises itself as wisdom. It whispers, be careful, wait until it's perfect, don't risk too much. But wisdom without courage is just cowardice, dressed up. Your gift was never meant to sit on a shelf. A lamp doesn't hide under a basket. It shines to give light. If you hide your gift, you're robbing not only yourself, but the world of the very thing you were created to contribute. The great philosopher Seneca once said, it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. That's it. The more you hide from fear, the stronger it becomes. The more you step into your calling, the weaker fear gets. Look around. The wealth of the graveyard is greater than the wealth of the marketplace. Because in the grave lies unwritten books, unstarted businesses, unsung songs, unlived visions, all buried by people who let the fear of failure keep them silent. But you don't have to add to that graveyard wealth. You can choose to release what's inside of you, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, even if it fails the first time. Because the truth is, failure is temporary, but regret is eternal. You can recover from falling, but you can't recover from never trying. At the end of the day, the only real failure is to leave this world without ever using what was placed inside you. Fear of failure convinces you that time is your enemy, that you've already missed your chance, that you're too late to start. It whispers, you should have begun years ago. You wasted too much time. Now it's over. But hear me, time is not your enemy. It's your ally if you know how to use it. The problem isn't that you're late. The problem is that you keep standing still while telling yourself it's too late. Every oak tree starts as a seed, but if the seed never touches soil because it's waiting for the perfect season, it will rot before it ever grows. That's exactly what fear of failure does. It convinces you to wait until the conditions look flawless, when the truth is the only right time is now. Heraclitus said, man cannot step twice into the same river, for fresh waters are ever flowing in. Translation, life keeps moving and every moment is new. You can't rewind, but you can begin. Wealth builders understand this. They know that while others wait for guarantees, they move with what they have. They plant today so they can reap tomorrow. And here's the secret. The longer you delay, the heavier fear becomes. Fear feeds on hesitation, but action starves it. Think about the man who tells himself he's too old to go back to school, too late to start a business, too behind to chase his dream. 10 years later, he looks back and realizes he would have been 10 years older anyway, but without the progress, without the growth, without the fruit. Fear didn't save his time, it stole it. So don't let failure trick you into believing your moment is past. As long as you're breathing, your purpose is alive. Time is not gone, it's waiting on your decision. At the end of the day, the only wasted time is the time you spend doing nothing because of fear. Fear of failure has a way of making you overthink, overanalyze, and overprepare until the opportunity slips right through your hands. You start asking, what if I'm not ready? What if I mess up? What if I fall flat in front of everybody? And while you're stuck in the what ifs, someone else with less talent, less preparation, and less skill steps up and takes the chance that was meant for you. That's the danger of letting fear rent space in your head. It paralyzes your potential. You've got to understand, no one is ever fully ready. The people you admire didn't step out because they had all the answers. They stepped out because they refused to let fear hold the pen that writes their story. The Roman philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Fear of failure makes you exist but never live. It makes you breathe but never build. Think of it this way. You can read every book about swimming, watch every video, study every technique, but you will never learn to swim until you get into the water. And the longer you stand on the edge, the deeper the pool looks. Fear magnifies risk, but courage shrinks it back to reality. And when it comes to building wealth, creating impact, or leaving legacy, hesitation is the silent killer. The deal goes to the person who moves. The market rewards action, not intention. Dreams pay out only when you step into them. And yes, you might stumble, you might miscalculate, you might even fail. But failure in motion teaches you more than perfection in pause ever will. So stop waiting for the perfect plan. Stop running endless scenarios in your head. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the first step. At the end of the day, hesitation costs more than failure ever will. Family, listen to me. Fear of failure is nothing but a thief. It robs you of your dreams before life even has a chance to test them. But here's the truth. You were not created to live small, to play safe, or to leave this world with your gifts still buried inside you. Failure is not final. It's feedback. Every stumble, every setback, every mistake is shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for the very thing you've been praying for. I need you to understand, regret is heavier than failure. Failure you can rise from, but regret changes you for life. Don't let fear write your story. Don't let hesitation steal your years. You've got one shot at this life and you don't get to hit rewind. The question is simple. Will you die with your music still inside you, or will you pour out everything you've got while you still have breath? So today I challenge you, step into the fire, move even when you're afraid, and bet on yourself. Because the greatest wealth you'll ever build is not just money, it's the legacy of a life lived fully, boldly, and without fear. Now go take your shot.